So, my name is Aninia. I work for Sphere, which is no longer a project but an NGO based in Geneva. We are 7 people in our office. Sphere is known worldwide, which is kind of a success story in itself. But it's not thanks to us, it's thanks to this handbook that is a good product that seems to work for many people. I've prepared a presentation. I keep wanting to change it because there's so many interesting things that are being said. So I'm just going to stick to my presentation. Otherwise, I'll mess it all up. I might anyway.
Well, you can discuss after with everyone. It's just to
So, as we've been saying for a long time, I think it still holds true. Sphere is 3 things. It is a handbook, it is a commitment, and it is a community, and that's how I will go through my presentation along that logic. This is the famous, how used is the most used handbook in the world. So the one to the left won the contest. Sphere is 20 years old now. We started with the blue version, the orange version, the green version. We now have the purple version. People know exactly which color sits on their shelf, with which color they started out with Sphere. And this is where we are now. This is the 2018 edition. And I would like to stick to this image for a little moment and walk you through the handbook, because I'm not sure everybody is equally, fully aware of what Sphere is and what it entails, the handbook. It's the beauty of the handbook is that it is an integrated approach to humanitarian work. It includes certainly an introduction that talks a lot about contextualization. Standards are universal. How do you use in context? If you don't do that right, standards will do more harm than good, because they will become a straitjacket. At the same time, they should not be used completely liberally, because then you might as well not have standards. The second part are the principles and foundations, and I think that is really important for our discussion today. And the cornerstone of the handbook is the Humanitarian Charter. 20 years ago, Sphere was put together, invented, developed, partially because people felt they really needed to become better at what they were doing, but also partially because the humanitarian system did not want to wait for external auditors to come in and check what we're actually doing and how are we doing. So the idea was to develop a set of guidelines and standards to help hold ourselves accountable to the work we do. And the charter is some sort of a user rights, client rights expression. That's how it was conceived at the time. And it became a really important expression of what holds this whole idea together. It's part of it's partially based on legal elements, but a lot also on the moral commitment to working for the affected population, and it's the rights of the affected population that are expressed in the Charter. It's the right to life with dignity, that's the first one. It's the right to receive assistance, and it's the right to protection and protection. The Charter also explains that humanitarian work is not contained in itself. It is part of a much bigger context, many aspects of which cannot be influenced by humanitarian workers. There's the state that is responsible for its own citizens. There are refugee situations where there's a host state. There's refugee law. There's internet. There's the idea of now I forget the word. It's proportionality. So it also moves into conflict situations. And again, what is the place of humanitarians in those situations? All that is in the Charter. I promise you the rest will go faster. We also have protection principles. They're relatively new. They set out a protection lens of whatever you do for everybody, not just protection professionals. And the core humanitarian standard, which is a lot about processes and organizational responsibilities, and we'll come back to that. And after those principles and foundations, you have the 4 technical chapters which cover water supply, sanitation, hygiene, promotion, food security, nutrition, shelter and settlement, and health. Those are expressions, practical expressions of human rights, and that's the importance of this handbook. When you do the work along those standards, the idea is that in doing this work, you work towards the fulfillment of people's basic human rights. So SPHERE is also a commitment. The people who work with the standards commit to do quality work, to be accountable to the people they work for, to do no harm, to be very careful about what they do, and to uphold people's rights and respect their dignity. The handbook updates are important because those are moments every 7 years or so where entire humanitarian sectors, like the wash sector, the shelter sector, they all come together and decide what is currently the best practice we want in this handbook, which will go much beyond the handbook, but which will inform all other humanitarian work. Those revision processes help re-establish coherence, coordination, collaboration among actors, and so forth. And the handbook itself is accessible, again, in different contexts, in different translations, and so forth. That is important. It's a freely accessible content. And while the handbook started out as an NGO initiative, it is now embraced by the UN, by local NGOs much further away, much further than just international NGOs, and also by lots of governments. And there's also a number of standards grouped in the Humanitarian Standards Partnership that goes into education, into livestock, into cash. There's a lot of standards out there along the same lines of the ethics of SPHERE. And why I'm saying all this is that we're starting to build, or we can get a sense that there's really a common basis of what we do. There's a common language in these standards and a common ownership of the handbook. And as long as there's this credibility of the standards, because they were developed in hugely consultative processes, they have a power in themselves. They are a legal and a moral basis. Now, what does that really mean? So we need to talk about governance, we need to talk about accountability in a real way, because otherwise, how can we make sure that we do what we say and say what we do so that it's really meaningful? The core humanitarian standard, it's one of the chapters in the handbook. It is worth reading. It goes through what an organization and aid workers should be doing and commit to when they do humanitarian work. Part of it is actions, and part of it is organizational responsibilities. And these responsibilities are expressed in policies and so forth. And there is a way now, more and more, to structure this adherence to the core humanitarian standard through self-assessment, through third-party certification even. So that means that it is an expression, I guess, of the further professionalization of the sector. Organizations commit officially, and they get a stamp at the end, to doing this kind of work in this kind of way, and do it well. The question is, what does that mean in the end? So you have all sorts of certified and self-assessed and organizations. there are many aspects of accountability. Accountability to affected populations, accountability to your own staff, accountability to other organizations, accountability to donors, which we should never forget, which is maybe one of the key power factors in this game. And we need to play with all those accountabilities. That's one aspect. And the other thing I wanted to throw in here was, can standards level the playing field? The playing field being this whole humanitarian sector. There's a lot of talk about localization, about bringing humanitarian agency to the national level. That would mean a lot more power to governments, to NGOs at the local level. Can standards help with that? Is that a way of again, bringing this common language much further into one broader discussion? And in the end, I want to end with this accountability to people, to the affected people, because I think that a lot of this is political. The humanitarian sector is a very big sector with a lot of money involved. There are a lot of interests involved, and it's very easy to forget who we actually work for. And even the PSCA discussion is often about, oh, we, the organizations, we need to make sure that we're doing well and we're correct and everything. But it's sometimes it forgets that we're actually talking about people who have been hurt. And someone talked yesterday about the day when the first humanitarian aid worker is put to court. Yeah. I heard something similar recently. Accountability, real accountability, is when the first aid workers are being sacked because they didn't do well. They hurt people. And I would like to end with that so that we don't forget what we're actually talking about. And this is my last slide. This is part of the humanitarian charter, and the slide says, the guy says, come on, it's better than nothing, isn't it? And to me, and he brings these silly bodysuits, and to me, this is a very intuitive expression of what dignity is, and should be understood to be. And I hope that this can guide today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much.